I will be in the position of Nir in these scenarios. Several years after the news of Al's death, Nir starts to form his own organization called the SBK, formed from the top FBI and CIA agents to hunt and find Kira. While making this organization, I would want all the members to have their identities completely gone from any kind of record. Not a single person should have any of real names or real identities to any other member except for myself. Even though the United States President is helping to create this organization, we shouldn't allow him to have any information regarding the identities of the SBK members or the location in which the SBK is working at. All of this is to prevent Kira from manipulating people whose names are public, as well as prepare for the possibility that a Kira supporter could accidentally become a part of the SBK. Furthermore, I would create a list for each SBK member. The list would contain the names and faces of each member of the SBK, but all the identities except for one name would be fake. Each SBK member would get these lists, but each one would have one real identity hidden within them. Each list would have one identity of an SBK member within it, but each list would have a different real identity. These lists would be told to not be shared amongst the other SBK members or any other person. If an SBK member dies from the death note, we would know which SBK member Kira used to get the information from, or if that SBK member is working with Kira. While introducing the SBK to the task force, we learn that the director of the police has been kidnapped. The kidnappers have requested that they trade the director for the death note. Knowing how many people should be aware of the death note, we can determine who would be most likely to want to get the notebook through the methods they're using. L and the task force are the only ones aware of the notebook other than the SBK, but they are already in possession of the notebook. Mello would be the only other candidate to be aware of the death note, as he learned about it the same way as Nir did. So Mello is most likely behind the kidnapping. I would inform the task force and L about the potential identity of the kidnappers. As well, I would request to know of the rules included within the death note to further my investigation into Kira as well, offering my assistance in the kidnapping. As well, I would want to know where it came from, this leading me to know of the Shinigami that appear after touching the notebook and follow its owner. Later on, the task force and SBK learn of the director's death. It would make no sense that the kidnappers would kill their own hostage, and since we know Kira can kill by means other than a heart attack thanks to the information of the rules of the death note we got from the task force, we can suggest that Kira is the potential murderer of the director, not the kidnappers. This would mean that Kira has access to police information and is potentially an actual police member. Not only this, but now that the kidnappers don't have any hostages, they'll most likely attempt to try something else to get what they want. The kidnappers should know very well the members of the task force. Given that, they would also know of relatives they have as well. It would increase their chances of getting what they want if they took hostage someone related to the investigation. I would inform the task force of this, and they might be able to set up security for their families before the kidnappers can get to them. Furthermore, since the director was kidnapped, we can determine that the kidnappers have watched over him for a while in order to kidnap him without anyone being able to track him down. Let's say by some chance the kidnappers got to any one of the task force relatives before the safety precautions were put in place. The kidnappers now have Seiyu Yagami and request the trade of her for the notebook. We suspect Kira knows of the kidnapping, so we can assume that Kira would kill Seiyu Yagami too. After a couple of requests by the kidnappers as to where the exchange will be made, we know that Seiyu hasn't been killed at all. If Kira knows of the kidnapping and isn't killing the hostage to protect the notebook, that would suggest a personal attachment to the hostage. Kira would most likely be a close relative to Seiyu. We know Chief Yagami is on the task force and also related to Seiyu. I would look into the Yagami family to see if there's any potential suspects. As for the kidnapping, I would offer up a plan to help get Seiyu back without giving up the death note. I would request to hold on to the death note or have someone meet the task force to borrow the death note so I could have a fake death note made to be used against the kidnappers. I would test if a person can be killed on only one page as well. We would be testing the 13-day rule by having a criminal write a name of another criminal in it. We would learn the ability to only kill with a page and that the 13-day rule is fake. I would get the fake death note I prepared as well as the real one. I would have a small tracking device planted in the back covers of both the fake and real death notes. I would take one page from the real Death Note and put it in the pages of the fake Death Note with some glue that can make the page easily removable if I wanted to take the page out. I would tell this plan to the task force, now knowing that Chief Yagami will make the trade. Before giving the task force the fake and real Death Notes, I would take several pages from the real notebook for myself. I tell Chief Yagami to keep both Death Notes in a bag. The bag will have a secret compartment for the real Death Note to go into. I tell him to also keep track of where the fake page in the Death Note is, and when he meets with the Mafia member to hold on to the Death Note and not let him take it if they wanted to test it first. If they wanted to test the notebook, I tell Chief Yagami to open the notebook and fold it so that they write on the real Death Note page, and if at any point they're distracted, remove the real page and put it in the bag or his pocket. When Chief Yagami goes to make the trade, he does what I've instructed, being able to keep the real Death Note and get his daughter back. The kidnappers have the fake Death Note, and because of the tracker in it, we would know their location and we can go arrest them later. After assisting the task force in the arrests of the Mafia members and Mello, we start working together to capture Kira. L was killed at the hands of Kira, which means Kira needed to see his face and know his name. This implies that Kira is someone who was working close with L. I tell the task force that I've discovered that the 13-day rule is fake and that Kira probably had them written in to prove his innocence. This would suggest that one of the task force members is actually Kira, as the rule would be made to display to the rest of the members that if there was suspicions of one of the members, the 13-day rule would prove them innocent. I would ask if any member on the task force was ever under suspicion of being Kira, in particular the second L. This would increase suspicion among the task force, most of it being directed towards the second L. I would offer that any of the task force members be allowed to contact me to share information if or when needed. Light, acting as Kira, attempts to have the SBK location found through the president by having FBI and CIA members try and find the SBK location, having been connected through the selection process for being an SBK member. Because the location and names of the members are all completely gone, there would be no way for Kira to get access to these things. However, the SBK and CIA members working with me on the SBK might be notified that the president is attempting to have the location of the SBK base found out. If I can figure this out, I would attend a private meeting with the president to discuss information. The president would reveal that Kira contacted him in an attempt to find the SBK location. I would ask of the means in which Kira contacted the president. He would reveal that Kira called him. We could try and trace the call back to a certain individual, possibly leading back to Light Yagami. It couldn't hurt to try, even if Kira managed to call the president without leaving a trace. If it leads to nothing, then we'd confront the task force, telling them to always keep watch over each other, especially any individual that was previously a Kira suspect. The second L and any other person previously suspected to be Kira are now under constant surveillance by the rest of the task force, making it impossible for them to use the Death Note. However, a special on Sakura TV airs revealing members that started a following of Kira. These members are all killed on television by a Death Note, while the previous Kira suspects are under surveillance. This would seem to imply that the second L and any other previous suspects would be cleared of suspicion, as these people on television just introduced themselves. Not to mention, they are all killed without introducing their names, which would also imply that this Kira has the ability to only kill with just the face. However, we also know that the weapon in which Kira uses is a notebook which can be passed along to other people. This wouldn't 100% clear the second L of suspicion yet. If the second L is Kira and he passed his ability on to someone else, we would have to look into his known associates or list of people who also worship Kira. There could be multiple people that Kira found to give the notebook to, and they could all be assisting Kira at the same time. We know that the second L and Kira are most likely someone part of the Yagami family, which would leave Light Yagami as the main suspect. Later on, Kiyomi Takada is announced to be Kira's new spokesperson. From the known associates of Light Yagami, we would find Kiyomi Takada to be one of them. Since there could be multiple people assisting L Kira, we would also want to look into the associates of Kiyomi Takada. I would have each SBK member assigned to someone with connections to either Kiyomi Takada or Light Yagami, and have them followed. As well, I would also try to get an SBK member to follow Takada as well. While the SBK is following these associates, one of them notices a person named Mikami writing in a notebook that looks like a death note. I would want to keep an extra close eye on Mikami, as it appears that he is the one in possession of the notebook right now. While one of the SBK members is following Mikami, I would have them attempt to touch the notebook and see if there's a Shinigami around. The SBK would touch the notebook but not be able to confirm if the Shinigami is there. I would find this suspicious, as a Shinigami should be seen after touching the notebook. This would lead me to believe the notebook that was found isn't the real notebook and that the real one is still hidden. Furthermore, I would also know from the tests we did before that it's possible to kill with only a piece of scrap from the notebook. I would keep tabs on Mikami the most to see if he is potentially still holding on to the real notebook, but I would still have other associates connected to Light and Takada followed. After a while, we would only be able to confirm that Mikami and Takada are the ones connected to Kira. Having one of the SBK members be security for Takada, I could have them look through her stuff and eventually find out about the pages she uses to kill people. The SBK and I can now start the phase of our final plan. We know that the second L is Kira and that he most likely lent his power to someone to do his biting since he was under surveillance from the task force. This would make Kira want to get rid of the task force and SBK when he got the chance, since it would relieve the stress of us watching him all the time, making it easier to act as Kira once again. We can assume that if the right circumstances are met, Light Yagami as Kira would attempt to kill all of us. I would arrange a secret abandoned location with no other witnesses than us. The day comes when we all meet at an abandoned warehouses. All the SBK members are there. All the task force members are there, as well as myself and the second L. I would confirm to the task force that all SBK members are present in this meeting. I tell everyone of the events that will unfold soon, that a person assisting Kira will come and look inside the warehouse, then write down all our names attempting to kill us except for the person who's actually Kira. I would act as if I see someone looking inside. I talk to the Kira supporter on the other side of the door, asking him if he wrote down all the names yet. He would confirm when he wrote down all the names. I would then count aloud the seconds before the first person written down will die. Once it reaches 40 seconds, I would have one of the SBK members rush outside the warehouse and bring Mikami inside, restrained and mouth covered with the death note. Inside the notebook is everyone's names in the warehouse except Light Yagami's, making Light Yagami the second L Kira. Previously, before the final confrontation, I set up the following. We knew Mikami was acting as Kira while the original Kira was being watched. I would create a nearly identical notebook to the one Mikami has, at least as close as possible. But every page would be fake and the names written in the notebook don't even have to match the ones in Mikami's notebook. I would write all the SBK members' names, including my own name, first at the beginning of the top of one of the pages, then followed by the names of each task force member in Mikami's handwriting except Light Yagami's name. We already had proof that Mikami was killing people with notebooks, so when the time came for Mikami to come with a real death note, I would arrest him on the way there while he has the real death note on him. As well, I would have Takada arrested, as we could have the pages we found on her to be sufficient evidence of murder, since touching them would reveal a Shinigami. Having some SBK members touch the pages first and some touch Mikami's notebook first, confirming both as real. I would bring Mikami to the warehouse but park the car away so the task force wouldn't see him. During the confrontation, I act as if I saw someone outside the warehouse, but there wouldn't be anyone there. All the responses that came after I asked the question would be a recording of one of the SBK members mimicking Mikami's voice, and I would just play the tape when I want a response to something I say. Once the 40 seconds are up, a SBK member would go outside taking the already arrested Mikami and the fake notebook we created inside the warehouse. The task force doesn't know the notebook is fake, so we can act as if it's real, showing the evidence that the second L, Light Yagami, is Kira. Doing this would cause Light to admit to being Kira himself. I could then have him arrested, closing the Kira case. How would you beat Kira as Nier? Is there a better way to do it? Let me know in the comments.